Well, again, I'm glad to have Cheryl Shevchuk from St. Mary's Riken, Marianne DeMarco, and Matt O'Neill from Malden Catholic, who are going to be sharing a little bit about their stories and experience with international enrollment post-COVID. And I know we'll have a number of board directors that watch this video as well. I think, again, as much as this is a webinar that speaks to school administrators and admissions directors, board directors kind of working with the admin team, looking at the big picture of an institution, it can't be lost on us that St. Mary's Riken is looking at 500,000 plus and added tuition revenues from their international population, Malden Catholic topping out at 1.1 million. But beyond the dollars, having experienced international students in my own school years ago, just the value add to the community and the culture was a fantastic piece. And I know there's limits to that, and our presenters might talk about that, about some schools getting way too top heavy. And that's not what the international students are looking for either. They want that American experience, but there's definitely a wonderful component from a diversity perspective. But enough about me. We're really here to have our school leaders present on this. So I'm going to ask Cheryl to add a little further introduction of herself as she goes ahead and shares her screen and talks first about St. Mary's Riken, and then we'll have MC follow after that. So Cheryl.
Yes, I will go ahead and share my screen. So my name is Cheryl Shevchuk. I've been working at St. Mary's Riken for almost 10 years now. Um, we may be considered a little bit of a smaller program since we have about 700 total enrollment, and usually we range around 3% of international students. Our high was about 28 students and our low was around COVID, and I'll share some of those numbers with you. Um, we are a homestay only school, so we do not have any dormitories or houses, and I think that's important to point out. And we are not in a big city. We are close to DC, obviously, but we are a little bit tucked down south in southern Maryland in the countryside. And that, of course, has an impact on our ability to, recruit students as well. So just want to share with you our pre-COVID numbers, our COVID numbers, and our post-COVID numbers, some benefits to having international students, share some challenges that I've encountered over the years, some things to keep in mind if you want to start a program or maintain a program with some health, and also maybe a couple things that the board of directors at your school could do to help support you if you want to have a program, or if you have a program, how to sustain it in a healthy way. So I'll get started here. So first I just wanted to share, let's see, why is this not going? Technical difficulties already. Okay, so first I just wanted to share a few of the benefits for having international students in our school. It is great for your general enrollment numbers. I mean, it may not be a huge population of your enrollment, but every enrollment really helps your school. So tuition revenue, obviously, from those students that come and are in those chairs. We do have a slightly higher international tuition than we do for domestic students. And so it can generate a little extra revenue, but also we use that revenue to say like pay for my position and some extra support that we need for the students. One of the best benefits of having international students is you bring in some really amazing talent. If you think about the pool of students that are willing and have the courage to come and study in a second language in a foreign country away from their parents, you get some amazing students that are willing to do this. And what they bring to your community is really a benefit to the overall community that you have. You might increase your academic excellence. You might have some students that are excellent in mathematics, for example, or STEM, or maybe in the fine arts. We've had students come through here that were just phenomenal students, and they matriculate to very high ranking schools. We've had students in our international program go into Ivy League schools from here. And then you might also get just some talent, maybe on the stage or in your orchestra or on your athletic teams. And sometimes it's that one student that has that extra talent that can put your school into the playoffs, for example. And the other students just that are here really benefit from having talented students come to our community. It does increase your global perspective. You know, they're learning the difference between a student that lives in Siberia and a student that lives in Serbia, for example. I don't know if you have found this true in your schools, but you know, geography isn't something that's highly, you know, a high priority in our education system. So just even learning a little bit of new geography, where students are from, different cultural things, and we share those and we have events in our community that really helps. Having those students in the classroom as well to say, oh, you know, we learn World War II history this way, and we, you know, just adding those extra perspectives in your classroom. The teachers love having international students here. And so don't you know, dismiss or reduce the just the benefits of having the students in your schools and what they do for the your domestic students. Also, just feel like having international students at an XBSS school is fulfilling the mission. You know, evangelism through education. All the students come here and they may have no faith background, a little faith background, a different faith background, and yet they're in our theology classes. They go to mass, they have a chance to meet with a priest through spiritual direction, and having a positive experience with faith and people of faith, I think is really, really important. So I think that's an awesome benefit for having those students in your school. So let me share with you just a few enrollment numbers. Now this chart is 5 years worth of our enrollment. It just to break it down a little bit, you can see the number in the deep purple is our total enrollment, and then I tried to say the difference between a multiple year student and a 1 year student. And this will make more sense why I differentiated a little bit later. And then how many new students we're getting. So you can see kind of pre-COVID was kind of a typical year. I'd say it was actually a little bit low, 19. We were tending to go 20 to 25 prior to COVID. But look at the number of multiple year students. It's primarily multiple year students. That means a student that's coming as a sophomore or even as a freshman and staying through graduation. You get great matriculation, colleges, statistics, huge jumps in their TOEFL scores, things like that when you have a student that stays for multiple years. So, and then you can see the number of new students, for example, for each one. And what I think you can see here is as we move toward COVID, we went from having mostly multiple year students, and they were typically from Asia, down into COVID years to like kind of holding steady, just the ones that needed to stay and graduate, to increasing in the number of 1 year students and decreasing in the year of multiple year students as we climbed out of the COVID years. So you can see the number of new students we're constantly having to increase to fill in the gaps for where we used to have those multiple students coming back and taking a seat. The other thing that influenced my enrollment numbers, I would say, are the number of agencies that we work with. And this is just a simple slide of total enrollment, new students, and the agencies that we work with. So you can see, you know, our total enrollment and the number of new students here. And we started out working with about 5 agency partners, and those agency partners would send us 5 to 8 to 10 students, and those would all kind of fill in our seats. But shifting after COVID, not everybody survived. And some of those agency partners took big hits. But I had been cultivating working with other agency partners even prior to COVID, because I was working on trying to pull numbers from different parts of the world. And so my number of agency partners that we started to work with has climbed. And this has allowed me to take 2 or 3 students from one agency partner. But now I say I have like 10 agencies that I work with, or 15. I don't get a student from every agency every year. But now we were talking 1 or 2 students from each agency partner, and my new numbers are going up. And if there's trouble in one area of the world that I have an agency partner, I'm not taking a big hit there. I might lose 1 or 2 or 3 students from that region, but I have some other agency partners from other areas of the world that are still sending me students. So it tends to keep my numbers relatively constant. So I like to think of my enrollment kind of like a mutual fund. Like the diversity is really good and healthy for your school. I don't want an Asian program. I want an international program. So that means pulling students in from all areas of the world and trying to make it possible for them to be here so that we have a rich cultural experience altogether. So here are just a couple quick strategies that I've used to build my enrollment. You need to do your research. Not all areas of the world are going to come to your school for the same reasons. So do your research about what are students looking for in this part of the world or that part of the world, and actually what their price point might be. Not all students in every area of the world have the same economic ability to send their students for education. So you might have to do some research on, whether your school is going to fit into a certain market. And then again, this is kind of the mutual fund approach. Expand your market into multiple regions so that if one region has some trouble in the world, your overall enrollment doesn't take such a big hit if something happens there. For example, China. In our area, we have a lot of host families that have high security clearance. So you can imagine if something politically or militarily goes wrong in China, if my school is dependent on just Chinese student enrollment, we'd be in big trouble. So we try to diversify to kind of help maintain those consistent numbers no matter what's happening in the world. And then I would just say, build your portfolio of trusted partners. Not all agencies are, easy to work with or trustworthy to work with. There's been some trouble, and I think if you go out there and start talking to people about agency partners, you'll learn some of the things to look out for. There are some certifying bodies that certify agencies as trustworthy, and I can tell you more about those details. That would be a whole nother webinar if we go into details about that. And then, like, this is so important. Support the students that are with your school and support them really well while they're there, because they're going to be your best marketing. They're going to go home. Their parents are going to tell all their friends about their experience, whether it's good or bad. So you have to be able to support the students that come to your school, and that will come back to you. So when you invest in your current students, you should get more enrollment in the future. Some couple challenges. It is challenging to market globally instead of just in your one little area. You have to tweak your marketing materials to fit the audience that you're trying to target. You do have to find quality homestays, because even if your school does everything right, but your student is not happy in their homestay, it's linked with your school. So you really have to commit to helping your homestay partners provide a quality experience for your students. There is a delay in the return on investment that some people don't tell you about. Like if you take a trip and go and recruit, it may be 2 years before you see an enrollment from your trip. And that is really hard in this day and age. Everybody wants an immediate bang for your buck. And in this world, sometimes it takes at least 1, if not 2 or 3 years to get your first student to come in. And then I think it's also just really important to keep defining and keeping the why as your driving force for why you have your program. Because if it economically gets difficult or if it's challenging to support your students, you have to continue to remind yourself why you want these students in your school and how you're going to support them in the future. All these things could be kind of a webinar in themselves, so I'm going kind of quickly, but hopefully we'll have some more chance to give you details, or we can have another conversation about it. Keep in mind, for an international program, you have to have somebody who can do the tasks of SEVIS, and that's work with Homeland Security. You need somebody who's trained and can keep students in compliance for their visas and do all their paperwork. International markets are super dynamic and they're constantly changing. In the 10 years that I've been here, what I did my first year and what I'm doing in year 10, I would say every couple of years, you have to really be nimble and shift with the changes in the world and the world economy and, you know, who's interested in coming and all that. So, and then this is really important. In order to have a healthy international program at your school, you really need everyone in your school to buy in and to support the mission. That means your teachers, they need to be trained to know how to interact with your students in a way that the student will be comfortable in the classroom. They might need some accommodations to feel comfortable. The people that work in the cafeteria, you know, the counselors, the schedulers, your dean of academics, everybody in your school has to be willing to support the program. You need the whole community working and having the vision to have those students there, what the benefits of having the students there, and then to do the work to support them. Just a couple things from the board. You know, I don't know what your board of directors is like, but money is always kind of a challenging thing. International marketing, international support, you might need some money for that. And maybe they're not used to spending money on an international program, but sometimes you have to spend money to make money. So just be prepared to support it. And then again, the delay and the return on investment. I think that is a difficult one. And if I think they just know that, eventually you can get your program to show where the enrollment is coming. And you need special resources to have a really healthy program. So maybe you need a couple sheltered classes, an international space on campus. Like I have an office where my students congregate, where they know they can find the resources they need. Do your teachers need cross-cultural training? Do your counselors need some cross-cultural training? Your host families? SEVIS support, and now SEVIS is charging a fee now every time you want to recertify your school. So SEVIS support is a must, and having someone trained on campus to do your I-20 paperwork for you and to keep your students in compliance is important. And so do you have the right people on your campus to do that? And the best thing I think your board could do is to really believe in and support the purpose of having your international students on campus. That, you know, I think some of my other colleagues would agree, yes, they're going to make money from the tuition from the students coming in and sitting in those seats. However, it can't just be about the dollars, or, you know, you lose your why and your motivating source. You know, having international students on campus is for the complete enrichment of not only that student, but your teachers and your domestic students and your host families and everybody that gets to interact with that student as well. It changes people's lives. It really does. And I could give you a lot of stories about that. It changes futures. You know, you have a student that comes in and wants to do engineering, and they get down with your fine arts department and they become, you know, they go off to to school in New York City at a design school and become a professional designer. I mean, it just changes people's futures. And then keeping in mind again, just the mission of Azaverian Brothers School, it changes people's souls. They interact with a community of faith. They get exposed to God and ideas of faith. And we've seen students that have pursued becoming Catholics because of their time at St. Mary's Riken, or they pursued a spiritual life after St. Mary's Riken in college. And so it can change their, destiny. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that what we do matters in the lives of these young people. So we are going to table, I think, the questions until later, but look at all those awesome students. These are all unique personalities. This is the bulk of the students that I have this year, and they are so much fun, and each one of them is unique and adds something amazing to our campus. So I just would encourage, if you're thinking about it, to put the supporting things in place and enjoy having international students at your school.
Very good. Thank you, Cheryl. Again, we'll do some Q&A after Malden Catholic presents. So while Cheryl turns off the share, there we go. I'm going to pop up a slide from Malden Catholic. And while I'm doing that, perhaps Marianne and Matt, you can go ahead and introduce yourself. So Marianne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marianne DeMarco, and I've been here at Malden Catholic since January of 2017. So I'm fairly new here, I would think, although my experience with the school goes back many decades, when my own children were here. I've been working with international students for 20 years. I can't agree more with Cheryl about many of the things that she has mentioned in her presentation. I've seen changes in the way students decide on where to go. Years ago, it used to be basically working with agencies, sort of. I can always compare it to a travel agency. You go into an educational consultant in China or Vietnam. They have a series of schools they can recommend where they have people working for them in different parts of the country. And so you ended up with students who came and they were entirely dependent on that agency back in China. And things have certainly changed because now our students are learning about our schools through the internet. They are so tech savvy that they're doing their own research. And I think the proof in the pudding for me is that of the 53 students I have this year, 21 of them are came as independent students. And with my help, their parents found an agent, found a host family, or they had a friend or a relative who lives in the general area. So that has changed. I think the way our teachers and our schools in general look at international school students has also changed in the last few years. China was the major, in this area anyway, was the major producer of our students. We got our students from Asia, China, some from Vietnam. But today we're working here at Malden Catholic with 10 countries. So we have a great variety of students. And one of the things that's really, I think, great is that they kind of it's a melting pot here at Malden Catholic. We have such a diverse domestic community that our international students, they kind of just melt into it, and you don't, unless I call them as an individual group, they have made friends. They are working with students from all walks of life. And I think that's important when you keep a school's population of international students at a low percentage. Right now, we're working about 6%. I always, over the years, have thought between 6 and 7% was a good number. Some years back, in another life, I had 150 students in a school that was not a very large school. And so what happened was it became a school within a school, and you don't really want that. You want these students to come here and have an American experience. So one of the things that I do is I really try to work with agencies that I trust and agencies that are local, so I can get together with them. I don't have to depend on an agency, say in Connecticut or in another part of the country, to send students. I work with a lot of local people. Also, the host families that I work with are host families that I have worked with for, I would say, 12, 15 years, some of them. And I know them. I know the type of students that will feel at home with them. I know what they think, what they prefer. Do they prefer boys? Do they prefer girls? Most prefer working with the family directly through me. And I think that's one of the things that's making our program successful. It's the fact that it's a very personal approach. I honestly, today I had a mother who came in to visit me. She's been here several times to visit over the course of her son being here. Yesterday, I had another mother and a grandmother who actually cooked food for me. The boy, the student, is actually living with the grandmother. The mother is a professor in China, and they move back and forth. Anecdotally, I get to hear their stories and why they're so pleased with Malden Catholic and why they've decided to send their students here. So looking at the chart that Patrick has so nicely put up on the screen, you can see that when I arrived, the first year that I actually was working on my own, there was someone else here that I was sort of working with for the first year I was here. But in 2018-19, we had 36 boys, all from one country. Well, we had one who was a Vietnamese boy. In 2019-20, we went up to 43. That was when COVID hit. We were at 43. And what we did, what I tried to do, and we were very fortunate here at Malden Catholic because we had a great program in place for dealing with COVID and being remote learning. So the students who were here, who went back home, ended up working remotely. And new students who wanted to apply to the school, who didn't really want to come overseas or couldn't get out of their country because of COVID, they were enrolled just in our program as a student working from home, a remote student. And so we brought it back up, I think, rather quickly. We kept jumping up. So by 2022, we were at 45, and this year we're at 53. And as you can see, our tuition revenue has also climbed along with that. And as Cheryl said, and I totally agree, you can't just look at the revenue. You have to look at what it will mean to your students, your domestic students. Now, some would say, and I've had this said to me, well, why do you want international students when you have a very diverse community of students who are, first generation, who may have been born overseas and come here as a child and have gone through school. They're American citizens, or they're on the path to American citizenship. They have the green cards. Why do you need international students? So my response is that growing up in a family that was international with immigrant, I was a second generation, one on one side, one on the other. And I found that I didn't know a lot about where my family came from, my native country, my country of my grandparents and those that came before, because when they come to this country, immigrants, they are focused on working, providing for their family, becoming American. So in many respects, they don't work to really push the idea that their children have to learn about their country. So consequently, what I have found is that here at Malden Catholic, when we bring in international students, I have other students who are coming and they'll say, Mrs. DeMarco, do you mind if I join your afternoon group that comes into your office sometimes? And I'll say, not at all. They tag along and they tell me that they're learning a lot about the country of their ancestors, things that they didn't know. And by the same token, I look at the international students and I do tell the teachers that they should look at them as a primary source. I mean, we have a boy from Ukraine. You can give, his father was killed in the war. He gives a totally different perspective on Ukraine, what's going on in Ukraine, than reading it in the newspaper or hearing it on the news or reading it in a book. We have a student from Bhutan. When I said he was from Bhutan, it was what Cheryl said about geography. No one knew where Bhutan was. Where's Bhutan? So it was a lesson in geography. And the cultural aspect, is wonderful. You look at different countries and how they approach life. It gives you, I don't know, I always consider myself a lifelong learner. So I feel that the students get a lot from that when they have students who can talk to them about their own culture firsthand, not from, a TV program or not from a book. And a lot of times the students will come in, the international students will come in and they'll say, Mrs. DeMarco, if I hear something in class, can I say that I think it's not correct if they're talking about my country? And I say, well, I would go to the teacher first. So I give them a whole spiel about, being respectful of the class, but that it is important for them to interact, because for us, it is a learning situation. We're learning from them, they're learning from us. I think that we have had great success with our program. We have wonderful students. Much like Cheryl, we have students who come here who are really wonderful. They're artistic. I do interviews. That's part of my getting to know them. And they'll play a piano concerto for me, or they'll show me their artwork. And they get to know you and you get to know them. So for me, aside from the financial aspect, I think the cultural aspect is wonderful. And it's something that I would encourage all of you to entertain. It's a great way to, I think, give something to your school. It's a program that really helps them to identify. Today we had a speaker at school, and it was amazing to see how quickly the students, they really became engaged, and they're thirsty for knowledge. So having an international student sitting in your class is a great way to provide that. Aside from the great academics.
Marianne, I want to leave a little time for Q&A, so I
Okay.
think we'll definitely hear from you. I very much appreciate that. Matt, I do want to just have you introduce yourself and see if there's anything else from the Malden Catholic perspective you'd like to add.
Thank you, Patrick. My name is Matt O'Neill. I'm the director of admissions here at Malden Catholic. I really don't have a lot to add. I mean, Marianne is our in-house expert. We're blessed to have her. It allows me and my other coworkers to focus on the domestic side, where she kind of runs all parts of the international process. But both her and Cheryl did a great job of highlighting the value of the program for us. Marianne mentioned some of the individual successes. Our current student council class president is an international student. We've had kids involved with all aspects of athletics and leadership roles in our clubs and other activities. So it really is just a fantastic addition to our school community. And as she mentioned, just from our standpoint, we're lucky to have a good domestic admissions process going right now, but we're happy to have around 5 to 6% of our student body dedicated to the international program. We feel like that's the right fit, right number for us. We don't have to hire, a lot more in terms of teachers or that sort of thing. We have Marianne's position, and one counselor sort of works directly with the international population. But, you can obviously see on the slide we have great revenue that comes from it, although that's just one of many benefits, that we see here. So.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. So I do want to open this up for some questions that you all have. And I'm going to throw out a couple that if you don't ask, maybe they can come back to. I was captured by the number of agencies you both work with. So St. Mary's Ryken, Cheryl, I think you said you had 10 and Malden Catholic 7. That was pretty intriguing. If nobody else asks it, I'm going to be curious to know if you guys have made personal trips abroad. I know some of our schools do send representatives abroad on that front, and also incentivizing any host families is a curiosity of mine. But before you answer any of those, other questions some of you might have for our presenters today, just go ahead and feel free to shout them out.
Hey, Patrick, it's Nick Grasso from Xavier. Thanks for organizing this. I'm watching a 3-year-old at the same time.
What's your process for finding, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead. I can ask you.
What is your process for finding new agencies?
Well, I've been working with many of the same agencies for a number of years. And when they approach you, I interview them. I talk to them about what we consider a good international student and what my expectations are, because I feel that I have to show them what I'm willing to accept. Agencies they love to just send you the people that they have. So if they're going to, it could be someone who will not be a good fit for your school.
Right.
And also, and there are also agencies, and I guess the reason I've whittled it down and I stick with a lot of them is because I've done this for so long that I know the agencies that do not pay any attention to what my expectation is about host families. I'm very strict about what I want for a host family. They can't live too far away from the school. They have to be willing to come in the evening so that the students, if they're participating in sports or athletics, they're not going home in the dark or having to take 3 or 4 buses. I,
do you go
I
about
don't want it
finding
to,
them?
yeah, I don't want it to be just a monetary thing for them.
Thank you, Marianne. Cheryl, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
think
how do you go about finding them, I guess is a better
yeah, so
question.
I think it's
So
pretty
we're,
challenging to find them. So there's a
Yeah.
couple ways that I have tried to cultivate new partners. One way is to talk to other schools that you have a good working relationship with, that believe along with you that when we all have good, strong, healthy international programs, it's good for all of us, that we're not competing against each other, but that we can help each other. And sharing a good resource of a good program is one of the ways that I started. I would say the biggest way that I've done this, though, is a conference called the ICEF conference, and it's an agency conference. It's like speed dating with new agencies. You literally have 20-minute meetings where you get 10 minutes to talk about your school and they get 10 minutes to talk about their agency, and you try to see if you're a good fit. It's called the ICEF conference. So it's kind of spendy if you have a limited budget at your school. I try to really use and maximize our dollars, but this was one of the ways that I cultivated finding new agencies in new regions. So like you might have a trusted agent in Asia that you're getting your students, but say you want to branch out and get some students from Brazil or Vietnam, then you can target those meetings at the conference with agencies that work in those regions and try to develop relationships. But I will add, this is one of those places where your return on investment is going to be delayed, and you have to be patient and cultivate those relationships to get the enrollment. But it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
One of the follow-ups I'll do afterwards, Cheryl, maybe if you're willing to share some more information on that conference, dates, things like that, I can disseminate that out. I think too, Nick Grasso was also asking in the chat to me, same sort of question. I think if our schools are willing to share some of those agencies, if we're not feeling too competitive about sharing some of those names, I can look to collect all those names and contacts. So I'll put that on my to-do post-meeting today as well. Other questions for our speakers? Cheryl.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Plaint. I'm chiming in from Good Counsel in Maryland. Two questions for you guys. I'm really just curious to see what your office structures are like. I know a lot has changed in this landscape, post-pandemic, and we're all rolling out of that. So definitely interested to see how that structure is set up. And then second, what is your policies? Kind of what's your standard marks for your TOEFL scores? We're having a lot of conversations internally with our academic side and us on the enrollment recruiting side, and making sure we're all kind of meeting in the middle, and just want to pick your brains on what you're asking for TOEFL scores for international students.
Cheryl, you want to take that?
Oh, sure. So by office structure, you mean, I don't know, like
Are you a
so
one-person shop, Cheryl?
I kind of am.
Me too.
Okay, great. No, this is perfect information.
I think I used to work more tightly with the domestic admissions team, but we really found that we operate kind of in different realms, so to speak, with our marketing and they have so many applications and things to deal with that sometimes it was just easier to create my own kind of path here. I had a good structure when I first came in, and the person that is now the head of our admissions for domestic used to be in my seat. So she has a lot of compassion and understanding about what I'm trying to do. And we try to work together where we can and use materials. But really, I'm kind of a one-stop shop. That's why I said you have to have buy-in from everybody else, so that when you come knocking on their door, they're like, okay, here comes Cheryl. She needs something for the international students. What can we do to help her? Otherwise, you can feel like you're just trying to hold this whole thing up by yourself. And it's too much.
Yeah.
As far as the TOEFL requirements, now this is going to depend on what resources you have available at your school. If you have a great ESL program, you can bring students in maybe with a little bit lower TOEFL. But I kind of I have grade level requirements because
Yeah.
students that are coming in as juniors and they want to take certain level courses as juniors, they cannot academically handle what is going to come at them if they do not have a certain level of proficiency. So different schools might have different requirements, and it really, I mean, I know it's kind of a non-answer, but it's going to be based on what your faculty, what your academic environment is like, and what support those students are going to have when they come in, and at what, you know, age into your program. I don't know that there's like a secret formula for that, but you know, we can talk offline and I can share with you kind of what I'm comfortable with, but other people might not be comfortable with the same thing I am because of what I know our community can do and the support that I have in the classroom.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll
Fair? Is
definitely-
that a fair
definitely-
answer?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll definitely take you up on your offer to connect offline. Thank you.
I have a question in the chat, but let me, before that, any other questions from those on the call? Question in the chat, any particular, not to, 1 minute answer from you both, Marianne and Cheryl, like any strong international marketing pieces that seem to be working really well? Shy of visiting countries, which I know some of our schools have done.
In my case, I'm basically working with the agencies that I have. I let them know what I need for the following year, how many seniors, how many juniors, freshmen. I trust them for the most part. I vet their students, but right now I have to say we're in kind of a transition process where we're updating a lot of the website so that we can have communications a little better in different languages, because up until a few weeks ago, it was basically a website. It was in English and there was no translation. But now we're working on that. So we've already, I think, put on 5 or 6 languages that our students will be able to get a lot more information. We also, on our website, we have an inquiry form, and I work with those when the inquiries come in. I immediately, contact the people and follow, proceed with what our academic, our admissions procedure is, what our academic requirements are, that sort of thing. And I follow through on that. So it's basically a one-person, one-on-one for me. It's the way it's been for a few years. So,
Thank you,
and
Marianne.
it's working.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I'd say for me, a 1 minute answer is going to be really tough because marketing is one of those things, like I said, that is constantly changing. So I would say a very important piece is your website. Is it friendly when people look at it? Can they find the information? I've really tried to work with our webmaster and said, look, they're looking for a couple keywords. If their
Right.
English isn't super strong, they're looking for a couple keywords, make sure that those are front and center and they don't have to dig too far to find you. But they're going to look at your overall school more than they're going to dig down to the international program. But having the inquiry form that's different than your domestic would be important. And then I do go on trips. I would say part of my marketing is being known. And you have to remember, families are going to send their children, sometimes their only child, to your school. If they don't know you and feel like you are a safe, friendly place that is going to take care of their most prized possession, you know, their child, then they're not going to send them to your school. So the relationship you have with those agency partners, as has been said, is really key for them to know your school and for you to have that good working relationship with them. And I will add this, I meant to mention it when I was trying to talk before about the agency partners is, you know, when I first started working, schools had a lot of power because I had more applications than I had seats to fill. And I had so many applications that I had to go through, and I said no a lot. Well, the pendulum has swung, and there are more schools that are accepting students now. And so you have to compete for those students. So you have to be a great partner to these agents who are out there really, you know, trying to be your sales team for you, trying to sell your school to these families. So if they need something, you need to be responsive. You need to be a good partner. If they need you to go on a trip and do the dog and pony show, as we say, you go and you do that. You might not see a direct enrollment from that, but as you build up that agency partner, they're going to have more families come to them with more students, and eventually that will matriculate to you. So I would say one of the best marketing pieces is to be a great school partner.
Great.
I,
thank-
I agree with you. I do think that I get a lot of compliments about how well I work with my agencies, and I've enjoyed working with them. I just, at this stage where we have more applications than I can fill seats, I'm not really looking to build any more enrollment. I'm looking to perfect what I'm working at now to make sure that the students that I do accept are the best, and that we can provide them what they want. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than to bring a student to your school and not be able to give them, you know, what they are expecting. You know, so one of the questions I ask and discuss a lot is, when you come to our school, what do you want to see? What would you like in the way of academics? Where do you think you fit on the spectrum of, you know, whether you're looking at Ivy League schools or just great schools? Because it gives you, I think, it gives you a good idea of that, whether that student's going to be happy at your school. Because when you get them there and they can't take all the AP classes they want because they're arriving as a junior, and they haven't got the prereqs for it, then they have to know that before they come, you know, that might be a possibility.
Thank you,
So
Marianne. I got one last question. I want to be respectful of everybody's time at 5 o'clock in the chat, and I know this is a common one. Just real briefly, tuition. Do you charge a different rate for international versus domestic? And is that international rate inclusive of everything that they're going to need on campus, or are they also getting billed for retreat fees, graduation fees, etc.?
at our school, they pay about $5,000 more for an international student. That's it. None of our students pay fees. The international students basically, they charge a little extra because of the, you know, my job and that sort of thing. But there are no additional fees except for graduation, but that's for everyone.
Thank you, Marianne. Cheryl?
Yeah, that's something that, you know, you really have to work with your administration and your board of directors on. I will say that we do have about the same. It's right around $5,000 more for an international student because of the services that are required to support that student while they're here. And then our fee structure is the same. But we have created like a little, we call it an auxiliary account, where parents can just send a kind of an estimated amount of all at once, so that we're not like going to them and saying, hey, you know, your student wants to go on this field trip now. So it's almost like a little school account that we set up that students, the parents can just pay as a part of their package, but it is like, you know, all the little things all put together and like a debit account. When they use it, it goes out and otherwise it stays in there. So that's just, we found that is easier than chasing parents for optional fees. It was just recommended again by another school. I called a program one time and said, how do you do this? And that's what they were doing. And we tried it and it seems to work for us. But it's
Great.
something that you're going to have to work out with your administration, your business office, and what's going to work best for your school, considering, you know, what the expenses are for your students.
Certainly. Well, Cheryl, Marianne, Matt, thank you very much for your time. I know there's a couple other questions coming into the chat. So if folks would like help connecting with our speakers today and you don't have their emails, just email me. I'll put you in touch. And again, I've got a couple follow-ups that I've written down that I'll look to share along with the link when we put this out. So again, if there's any other questions, let me be the convener, but great seeing you all. And thanks to our presenters today. Have a great day.